All right, welcome in. Here we go. It is the week 4 edition of SEC football and beyond, the leading up to Saturday edition of the show, the later in the week edition, whatever way you call it. It's SEC football and beyond, and it is coming to your ears right now. It's me, Dan Matthews. It's Chris Landry with you. Find him on Twitter at Landry Football. Find me on Twitter at Dan Matthews ATL, and also, of course, with us doing the show on Twitch. You can find us there, twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. That comment section, fill it up. Get it there. Get those questions in there at the end of the show. We should be able to get to them. And really, Chris, with today's slate of games, I think that we will be able to get there because this week we're getting some bye weeks, whether Lane Kiffin likes it or not.
Yeah. He's getting ready, working hard. In making comments and I'm sure getting ready and game planning already for Alabama week, because he's into Alabama week, or he's into the bye week before Alabama, so he's ready to go, and we'll get to see Alabama against Southern Miss this week. But it's got an interesting game. I can't wait to watch Arkansas A&M. Can't wait to go over all the games, some big games this weekend around the country and certainly in the SEC. We've got a couple of them. I think we're going to learn a little bit more. I had a feeling we're going to have a little bit of a better understanding after Saturday about the SEC West for certain. And so I think we'll see, obviously, with A&M, Arkansas, and then and towards the bottom, LSU, Mississippi State, and, of course, LSU, Auburn next week. So that's the good thing about conference play, doesn't it? It starts to separate, and you start to get a feel for who's able to match up and deal with different styles of opponents within the conferences. Most of the non-conference stuff is out of the way, at least the pre-conference stuff out of the way.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, anybody that has a non-conference game going to be later on in the season, the in-state non-conference rivals, those are going to be most of the ones that you're going to be looking forward to. But you're exactly right. This is where now we get into conference play. So I would say, Chris, probably a way to describe week 4, solid, not great. It's a good weekend. So like I said, it's solid. You're going to have some good games.
Yeah, and there's no question about it. We'll have some good ones, and I think we're going to be interested to see a couple of matchups that I think are really intriguing. We'll get to that here going forward. Florida-Tennessee used to be one of the absolute great games. It used to be the game in the conference years ago. It's not the case now, but that has a little bit of intrigue, I think, at least to see what Tennessee might be able to do. So, hey, we're going to go over all of them. And as Dan said, join us, in the chat room. I know Barton has joined us, and I hope all of you join us. We're going to get to your questions here towards the mailbag section at the end of the show.
Yes, please do. And for those of you that know what we do here, we break down the games, usually go for the lesser slate early on. But this week, like I said, all solid. So you're going to have solid games there in the beginning. Then at the end, we give you the marquee games. This week, Chris, I only have one marquee game because, like you said, Tennessee and Florida, I don't want to give away the pearls of how I think that one can go, but at least the way that Vegas is telling you, I think you know how that one feels. But the marquee game we're going to save for the end, of course, is number 7 Texas A&M in Arlington taking on number 16 Arkansas. So that'll be a lot of fun. And like you said, too, Spartan Barton joining us in the comments. Again, right there. We love those who comment. We love all of our listeners, especially the ones, too, who want to join in on the action. So we are always glad to oblige. By the way, too, for those of you catching the show for the first time, welcome on in. Tell your friends about us, and also just know that you can catch the show every Tuesday and Friday wherever you get your podcast needs. That's Apple, that's Spotify, that is wherever you download your podcast. Feel free to do that. And also, too, can't say it enough, download the Southern Sports Today app, and you can get the Chuck Oliver Show and everything that is part of the Southern Sports Today family. So all of those things can come your way. All right, Chris, real quick before we get into the slate of games this weekend, let's get into some news and notes as kind of combined the news and notes here. A lot of national news and notes, especially, but one SEC one in here. College Football Playoff Board not going to vote next week on the proposed 12-team format. We kind of saw this coming, But now I guess this is the alliance, if you will, trying to flex some muscle.
I think it is. I think it's also. I think there's no question that's what it is. They are irked at. Is that the right word? Irked. There's a stronger
We'll
word.
take it.
We'll take it. Now they certainly were aggravated, irked, perturbed that clearly they felt like they didn't have all the information, or there was other people that had other information. And we know what this is about. This is about Greg Sankey, and he had been talking with Texas and Oklahoma around the time that he was also talking about playoffs. Here's the big thing, though, because those things, that's real. What I think, though, is prudent with this, and I don't know the time frame of when we're going to have playoffs. I mean, the 12. I think we're going to go to 12. I think that's what it's going to be, because I think that is what they all thought was going to be best for everyone, whether you agree with it or not. And I'm talking about all the schools. I think the key thing, the pivotal thing here, is that I think they want to take this to market. I mean, I think, under the current agreement, it's good business to try to see if NBC wants to, do it like, the NFL does it, where you get other networks involved, and not just let's just ESPN take all this. I mean, you're going to get bids on this. There is no reason why you can't take on an NFL business model where if you have a 12-team playoff, let's just go there, that it can't be some Fox, some NBC, some ABC. You don't know who might be interested. And for you add them all up, and you still might be able to get the same amount of money from ESPN, but maybe they don't get the whole thing. So I think it probably makes sense to step back, think about it, but it may delay when this gets going.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point as well, I mean, others getting involved, I would think that that's a smart idea. And by the way, too, I'm old enough to remember when NBC had crucial championship college football games that were not just Notre Dame playing at home on a Saturday afternoon. I do remember some of those days. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that probably that's what they're trying to open it up to is, hey, it doesn't have to just be an ESPN ABC property here. Fox, you want to pony up the money? Let's dance. CBS, you want to do the same thing? Let's go. NBC, like I said, or even as we enter into the age of internet streaming, Chris,
yes,
does somebody try to do that as well? So
yeah, that's a big part of it too. The streaming part's a huge part of it, and you have the business dealings with. Okay, so ACC and SEC have the tie to ESPN, but you've got the Pac-12, Big Ten is a tie with the Big Ten network with Fox. So I think they all kind of want to see how this plays out and what's the best financially for the whole playoff atmosphere, because I think selling it is maybe a partial deal. Breaking it up a little bit might be something to do. Okay, well, 12 teams, you got more games, and, let's break it down into packages and let's get more money. I don't know. It may be best, and it may end up being there, but I do think that it's common sense. You're going to get more money from one if there's competition along with them. So
let's jump into the SEC here really fast. Alabama top running back Brian Robinson dealing with a rib injury ahead of the Crimson Tide's game this weekend against Southern Miss. Nick Saban earlier in the week, Chris, saying that he is day-to-day. So far this season, through 3 games for Robinson, 37 attempts, 208 yards, 208 yards, a couple of touchdowns along of 23. I would probably suspect that if he can go, he will go. But at the same time, though, Chris, I would not be surprised if we don't see a heaping helping on Saturday of Trey Sanders, Jace McClellan, and Roydell Williams.
Absolutely. I think we'll see, a pitch count if he does play. I think working the run game is something they've got to do, but I don't know how many carries the young man gets in this game. I agree with you.
All right, and then really fast before we get to the games this week in the ACC, I know that some people say, hey, there's ACC football and beyond for that. There is that. But a report by Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, Chris, and I know that you have your ear to the ground on these types of stories, but apparently already some discontent at Miami with the job that Manny Diaz has done, and some people who want to be part of the decision-making process are already starting to look at possible replacements. Mario Cristobal has been a name that has been thrown out there again, according to Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald.
Well, that is kind of the top of their wish list. Mario is their guy, and Mario's, played there and he's got a lot of ties to the program. And I mentioned this early on another show that this morning, because I was asked about the Miami program, and I don't even know at this point if they could get Mario. Time will tell. He's got a better job now. Now, better is relative. If you want to go back home, and that's fine. I could see that. I could see him considering it. But he's also in a position, too. I know this. He will get some play. At least there's some level of interest by USC, and because they're so early in the process, they're looking at a lot of folks. He would be one of them. I think he'd be, and again, timing's everything. I think he'd be one of the top candidates to replace Nick Saban at Alabama. But that may not be the case 5 years from now. I don't know. Right. I wouldn't rule it out. But one of the things about Miami, and I'm going to throw Florida State in the mix too, because they're in different situations, but they're kind of similar. Miami is still a great job. Florida State's still a great job. But, in an era where they really were able to dominate in recruiting in that region, the facilities, while they're good and they're getting there, Dan, they got behind, and they are still behind in the arms race. I mean, it's better than it used to be. In it, just the money flows not that much. In Miami, look, if you want to shake the money tree and those guys want to really become involved, I think Mario would sit there and listen. This is how it looks. This is how it looks at Alabama, because I was there. This is how we did it in Oregon, and this is what the staff needs to be, and this is what all the list of the things. Then I think you might look at it, but that's a unique place. I don't know how many people know about the Miami. They put an awful lot into the medical school, and then an awful lot in the music school there. They make they put a lot of fundraising there. And, I don't know that they have the money that the outside money that's going to do what I think that big time programs do. It'll be interesting to see. It's understandable why they'd be interested in Mario. I also think, with all due respect, and I'm sensitive as a coach, but I've never been a big fan of. I think this job's a little too big for Manny Diaz personally. I think they can get a better coach, but they've gone through a bunch of them. And I think they're hearkening back to, why can't we be the dominant Miami? And it's because they have made bad hires and they've not kept up as much. And that's why I threw Florida State and Miami in the mix, because they've fallen behind and now they're in the chase position. So, unless you can get a Mario because he's got a tie there. People were critical that, well, why'd you go get the Memphis coach if you're Florida State? Because Mark Stoops said, I got a better job at Kentucky. I was there as an assistant. I'm not going there. And so I don't, that is, with all apologies, offensive maybe to their fan base, because they think, the greatness of Miami and Florida State. But that's where you've let it slip. And all of a sudden now, there's nobody that of the age of being recruited knows anything about Florida State or Miami being good. Those kids in high school now don't know anything about it. Right. And that's the shame. That's where you let a generation go. And now everybody's, most everybody's got facilities that will match or beat you. And so you've got to reestablish yourself. And so I don't know. That's it just gave me an opportunity to go into something that's probably a little bit more than just about Mario, quite frankly, but it does have an effect on who can you get. Now, that's a job that you think clearly Mario Cristobal would walk on glass to go get the Miami job. Yet, because of where it slipped, I don't know that they can get one of their own, a guy that grew up in that heart of the area, was a Hurricane in the heyday. I don't even know we're going to question whether you can even get that guy. That should not even be a question if you think about it.
No, it shouldn't. But here's the other thing as well. And by the way, Spartan Barton, I like one of your suggestions. We talked about that Thursday on the Chuck Oliver Show when 97.7 The Zone's Drew DeArmond hosted, and he's got a suggestion there. Chris, I'll save it for you later. But I think a couple of things here. Number one, they got to get the hell out of Hard Rock Stadium, and they've got to get a stadium on campus or at least close to there. I mean, Chris, it reminds me so much of when University of Houston with Kim Helton as the coach, when they were playing at the Astrodome, and you could have 20, 25,000 people there. It looked like you were playing a game in a cave. And it's like Tulane when they were at the Superdome. Tulane finally said, we got to get back on campus. I mean, if we're building I don't know how huge Tulane Stadium is. It doesn't look like it's all that large. So, but still, regardless, there is value in having that on-campus stadium. University of Houston did it. They moved back to Robertson Stadium. Now they've got a really nice one that's about 35, 40,000 fans deep. So I think that's something there. The other part of it as well is you threw out Mario Cristobal. Who is Mario Cristobal? He is a former Saban assistant. You can back me up or dispute me on this, but Nick Saban, from what I understand, when guys leave to take a job, he asks them the number one question, do you have full control? And from what I understand, Chris, and tell me if I'm wrong again, but from what I understand is if they say, I'm not sure, he tells them, well, then I would think about that job.
Yeah, no, he absolutely has, like he does with players who leave early about their draft status. He sits there and says, because he's been through it. He says, look, it's great. And if you want to go, this is if, unless it's one of those guys he's pushing out the door to get another job. Yeah, he absolutely says, look, he sits down and gets advice. And a lot of it is guys want to go to him and get his thoughts on it. But absolutely, what type of control you're going to have, what type of support you're going to have, because that's a big part of it. No, there's no question about it. Look, Al Golden was a very successful coach at Temple, and you could see he was a fast-rising guy, and it didn't work there, and nothing's worked there for a while. That says something. That says something right there. So, and yet, the right guy works, but the right guy is only going to come if you get the right type of support, control, however you want to put it.
Yep.
And so that's a big part of it. And when people say things like, well, could Nick Saban win at fill in the blank? Well, Nick Saban would not take that job. And I'm not talking about Nick Saban now, but at some point, he wouldn't have taken that because he wouldn't have got the support. And so, well, I bet he wouldn't have been able to win at Vanderbilt. Well, no, because you wouldn't have taken it. Now, he would have done, if he did it, he would get as much out of it as you can get out of that place, but he's not going to take that type of job. I mean, that's why he left Michigan State, because it wasn't, he couldn't take that to a level in his mind. I think that's a absolutely something that he advises his guys to have in play before they jump and take a job.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I think we could have some high-profile openings either during the season or at the end of the season. So already silly season getting underway in college football. No surprise, because we're getting players who are transferring in season, Chris, and able to play. So the sport evolves as always. For this and more in terms of news and notes from around the SEC, college football in general, the NFL, recruiting, the draft, whatever it might be, LandryFootball.com is your shop for that. And, Chris, just real quick before we get into the games, I mean, the film room breakdowns you have been doing over there, you and your guys, just a really in-depth work over there and a lot of great things that people can go check out.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We like it. Obviously, we've got the film room previews up for this week. Still got a few more. We're trying to get a little bit more information, but most of them they're done. You can find them by conference. We've got the feature games, which this week are Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and West Virginia, Oklahoma. We just go into have a more of a specific, just individual posts with those three games. But every game is broken down inside the conference, and for the NFL fans, we've got the same thing as well. So we have a few feature games: the Thursday night game, the Monday night game, the Sunday night game. But we've got a couple of other big games, and then we've got obviously all the other games broken down. So check it out, and we recap them, review them Monday and Tuesday by conference and overall in the league. So you get a good feel for why things happen, not just what happened. And so we're really happy about it. Got the news and notes every day that we've got there for you. So check it out. Take advantage of the football season sale. As we like to say, if you like football, you're going to love LandryFootball.com. It's like having your own scouting department for less than a magazine subscription.
No doubt about it. So go check them out, LandryFootball.com. Follow Chris on Twitter as well. A lot of great stuff there at Landry Football. Me on Twitter at Dan Matthews ATL. His stuff's more interesting, trust me. All right, let's get into the games this week. The noon slate, we've got three of them as Chris, Georgia, number 2 Georgia in Nashville, taking on Vanderbilt. Huge favorite in this one, no surprise. Minus 35. I think the storyline for this one, Chris, is the quarterback position. Number 1, JT Daniels this week, talking with the media, asked about the oblique, a day-to-day thing kind of with it. And then the other one is Kirby's handling of the quarterback situation. I don't know if we got into this much when we recapped week 3, but of course that's been a topic of conversation where I am locally in Atlanta with not only playing Stetson Bennett, but also too, the shuffling of him in. Do you have an insight into what's happening with the quarterback situation at Georgia?
I've had conversations, but I think, what I've been told is, look, they're trying to work both guys. They're trying to prepare for, circumstances if they have to turn to either one. Something, I don't get that full-on commitment to this is the guy, which is kind of intriguing, but they're, as you know, very coy about what they're doing, even announcing, in previous weeks of who's number 1, did not even tell you. So I don't know. I'm more of a wait and see. What I do know is that as they kind of develop, this offense continues to develop. I'm curious to see how much the passing game grows. I think JT's the guy that can make the most plays for them in a big-time game against an elite team that they're going to have to play ultimately. But I certainly understand getting other guys reps. So I'm curious to see. I think this is a scrimmage type game for them. It's not going to be much of a problem. Vanderbilt ran the ball fairly well against Stanford. They just don't have a whole lot. The other thing I'm wondering too is if they've got JT on a pitch count, and maybe some of the injury stuff they're trying to limit in that regard. That's the only thing I can really get my gauge on. By the way, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but since I think about you, young, bright, great broadcaster, I wasn't really much of a fan of this guy. I knew him a little bit, but this is the Larry Munson Bowl. You know who he was a broadcaster for before you got to Georgia, right?
I did not.
He was in Nashville, and he did Vanderbilt games, and he did Nashville Sounds baseball games. And I don't know why. A friend of mine, we were talking about this recently, he got fired, and you'll love this. He got fired from the radio station. He was doing a Nashville Sounds game, and he had the open mic that he thought was dead, and he dropped the F-bomb. He got and the sponsors just get. I don't know why, because I know what would make. I don't know why I was thinking about announcers. I guess the SEC network is getting ready to do a feature
Sunday
on something, and anyway. But Larry Munson was a legendary announcer for Georgia, and you've probably seen a lot. Dan has, but a lot of you listening may be aware of it. I don't know, because Larry was old and older than maybe a lot of folks, but he actually was with Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt was actually good then. But yeah, so I don't know why I think it's the Larry Munson Bowl because Georgia Vanderbilt. But I digress.
Oh, trust me. I mean, a living legend still lives on here in the state of Georgia. It's Lauren. What do you got? I can't even do the Larry Munson impersonation as best as possible. But Lauren Smith still part of the pregame show for Georgia
Oh,
games.
okay.
So
Cool.
yeah, so from the sidelines to still doing stuff with the pregame there on WSB. So that still lives on for the Georgia broadcast. All right, LSU at Mississippi State. LSU's a 2.5-point favorite in this one, Chris. And I think a couple of storylines here. Number one, where do they stand offensively? I mean, I think I'm kind of paraphrasing here. Did O basically say, well, we're kind of working on things at left tackle? Uh-oh, that does not sound good. And the other one as well, I mean, you've got a good eye on what happens with that program. Supposedly, John Emery has continued to practice, continued to get reps. I mean, is that something that are we maybe looking for an announcement here in the day or two?
Well, the dad has, I don't know if he's gone through it. He's threatened to sue. So I think that has a lot. Good practice. I mean, this is one of those things where the university and the athletic department are particularly to relate Ed and the football staff. This is more of a compliance issue and a university issue and an academic. And so I think Ed wants to practice him, and I think legally they basically said it's probably best to let him practice, because if his dad's going to litigate, and they usually win when they sue. Not the dad, but just these situations. I don't know enough about the legal part and the legal process. I think that has something to do with whether it leads to whether you play or not. I don't know. I also think that they want the guy to get on the field. They don't have a difference-making type back. They don't have a running game. They got offensive line issues. This game's really intriguing to me because I think this week and next week really tells us a lot. I think this game is one of the more pivotal games for the middle to the bottom part of the West. Like we've talked about how, at least I think that everybody in the West is pretty good. This will tell us a lot. I mean, Mississippi State fans are frustrated with Mike Leach. We've discussed it here, the up and down part, losing to Memphis. And I know they're frustrated about the officials, but they also say it shouldn't have come to that. We know LSU and their fan base is frustrated. This game is probably going to tell us who's going to be fighting to stay out of the basement of the West. And we've got LSU Auburn next week. So this game is one that is really big for both of the teams. And I mean, it's, it's bigger for, I don't know, I want to get into that. I mean, it's big. I don't think Ed can afford to lose this game. I think that folks in Starkville are going to be frustrated if they lose it. This is not quite the loser leave town in the Les Miles, Gus Malzahn Auburn Bowl game, remember? And it was Les that left town, literally. I don't think it's just that. I don't think we're going to see a firing Sunday by the loser. But I would call this the ultimate quality of life game. You don't want to lose this game. The loser here is going to feel it, and probably less, there we go, Ed even more. Because, I think that, there's more there. I think, Leach, second year, I think they're frustrated. I think they maybe can see it, but they're not ready to dump on him like they're ready to dump on Ed in Baton Rouge, or already have, quite frankly.
Well, it would just be a continuation of frustration, Chris. It would be, number one, why aren't you good at bringing coaches here? Number two, it would be, look at all this talent, and you're losing to UCLA, to Mississippi State 2 years in a row. I mean, even next week with Auburn coming to town, you're exactly right. I mean, these are games right now, and we said this before the season. I agreed with you that if they lost to UCLA, that could really set their season on a path they didn't want to see it go, especially Ed. You win these two games this next couple of weeks for Ed, Then it's all of a sudden, hey, everybody take a breath. Los Angeles, first game, okay. We're starting to see improvements in the run game, starting to get some push up front. The defense is looking better. Let's just see what we got. Is this an SEC West champion? Probably not. But is it a team that still can win 9 games? Maybe.
Yeah.
If they lose one of these 2 games or even both of them, or it's a place that LSU fans don't want to go. Chris, if you think it was bad after UCLA, it's going to be really bad for Ed Ogeron and everybody there inside that football building.
Right, because the problems that you mentioned with LSU are real. They are having problems on the offensive line. They are struggling to run it. But the fans are going to see it as, you were embarrassed by Mississippi State last year. You gave up 623 yards. That alone, you ought to have them ready. You should get that done. And if you don't, they're going to be ticked off. And on the Mississippi State side, if you lose after losing to Memphis, and everything is tied to what's happening up north in that state with Ole Miss, getting ready to play Alabama, and a lot of people think they've got a good shot, whether they do or not. That is, well, look at what he's doing up in Oxford, and this is, so neither one are in really good shape. I just would not want to be in the shoes of the one that loses this game.
I mean, Chris, I'll take it even a step further. It's for both sides because LSU hates Ole Miss and vice versa. And if Lane Kiffin continues to have this thing going in an exciting direction in Oxford, you don't think that maybe even Scott Woodard starts to, hey, are you liking things in northern Mississippi, or would you like to have better athletes and be able to have even more fun here in Baton Rouge? I think that those are valid points you bring up there with what's happening in Oxford right now.
How about that? How about something? I'll give you something. Just not to get off too much off target, but you're Miami. We talked about Miami. If you say, hey, Lane, you miss Boca? You miss the South Florida lifestyle?
How about a little more money to live down here?
Yeah. I'm just wondering because I don't know that. I don't know that he's Scott Woodard's type of guy. We'll see. But I don't, as people are saying, if he upsets Alabama, pulls the upset over Alabama and they really finish strong, he's probably going to strike because he will get something that he probably wouldn't have got otherwise.
Right.
But he's not going to get USC again. No, but you know what I mean. Like people are throwing that out right back. But Miami might be something that interests him. I don't know. Anyway, I don't mean to get off track, but
just to wrap up your point there, it does kind of show you how full circle he has come in terms of his reputation as a coach, Chris, because he does still have some of the jokes and the sarcasm and the goofiness on social media. But the fact that he's even being remotely mentioned for SC again after the just ludicrous way that he was fired from that job and how they couldn't wait to get him out of that job. That shows you the job that he's doing right now, not only that he's done at FAU, but now that he's doing in Oxford. We'll see how it all shakes out for Lane Kiffin there. Let's move to a game. This one pretty interesting. Missouri at Boston College. I know you're a big Jeff Hafley guy. It's going to be a noon game up there in Chestnut Hill. A little bit of shots fired this week by Eli Drinkwitz. And Chris, I'll just go ahead before I throw it to you. I understand what he's saying about, I don't really understand why we're playing this game. We're not going to be recruiting guys out of the New England area. But also, though, too, I will say this. The whole thing about make it interesting for recruits, that doesn't need to be said. And that's already basically trying to say we respect our opponent, but we don't really respect our opponent. And the other part of this as well is, Eli, I hate to tell you, but you're Missouri. I don't really think that you can be the beggars can be choosers right now. I think you're part of the SEC that has to take games like this.
Yeah, and, look, that's a conversation you have with your administration going forward. We're going to schedule a little differently. Well, we'll do it. Do it in a more geographical, beneficial area for recruiting. And But I think the way you kind of present it's not really good. Now, with that said, their offense is starting to play pretty good. Their defense is not good. I really like BC, but without Phil Dracovic, they're going to struggle, I think, to keep up with points here. So, with all of that said, the other thing that you don't say that if you're Eli is you don't say there's not that game we're going to play and then go out there and play poorly and lose. You just don't do that, man. You that's just not good. And anyway, I think that there's a lot of people really high on Missouri. I don't like their defense yet, and I think they're not quite where maybe they thought they would be. And so anyway, I think this game's interesting. Kind of got Missouri in a close one here because if BC beats them without Dracovic, that's a big win for them. And it's not a good look for Missouri, quite frankly, because this is a different team. The strength of BC, yeah, they've got 3 good offensive linemen, and overall the unit's pretty good. But their strength, believe it or not, is not their backs in the running game. It's the receivers. And they're able to throw the football effectively. Without Dracovic, that's going to be an issue. Now, Grossel's, I thought was effective last week, but they haven't played anybody, BC. So we'll see. This is an intriguing game, and I've been asked quite a bit about it on a few shows this week. So people must be wanting to play it. But I would just say this, that, be careful on it. I just think that while BC might have been the play for me anyway, I know, quick plug, LandryFootball.com. We got the detailed breakdowns in the SEC as well as the ACC because it's the same, got Missouri in a close one there, because of Phil Dracovic.
Yeah, Vegas seeing it the same way too, and Jeff Halfley, and by the way too, is usually the case in this. Eli Drinkwitz offered it wasn't meant as an insult, all that kind of stuff. All right, I mean, look, when you say things, some people are going to take it the wrong way. I'd rather you say things than just give us a tape recorder of coach speak all day. But Jeff Halfley, though, with the right approach here, Chris, is don't engage. Just say, well, if he really didn't want to come to Boston, he should have called me, asked me, and I would have said, hey, let's come out to Columbia, Missouri. We'll play you there. So, I don't think that once the ball kicks off, it's going to be a huge factor in this game. The better team's going to win, and we'll see who that is on Saturday. Let's get to, like I said, we're going to save the A&M Arkansas game for later on in the show. But Auburn, after their loss last week in Happy Valley to Penn State, coming home to host Georgia State at 4:00. Auburn, a 27-point favorite in this one.
Yeah, obviously this is an Auburn team that's pretty good, and they'll take care of business here. I like what they've done thus far. I think there's some things they've got to clean up. They've given up way too many plays in the pass game, defensively, and then offensively, I like to see more out of the passing game. So that's what I'm looking for here. I think they have played well in what I would call against the weaker opponent a lot in the early stage. So if you're looking at the game, I think the line's about 27. I think there's a good chance they kind of play well, cover, and Georgia State I don't think is going to give them a great deal of resistance here. We'll see, though. Maybe I definitely think Georgia State's better than the 2 earlier opponents that they played, Alabama State and Akron, earlier. So it'll be a tougher challenge than that. Obviously, it's about, adjusting to what they were not able to do against Penn State and getting right.
Well, what I told you about Bo Nix at home, too, 20 touchdowns, 1 interception during his career at Jordan-Hare. So it's always good to have a homecoming for him and the Auburn Tigers, and they will have that 4:00 on Saturday. Before we get to Tennessee and Florida, as a matter of fact, I'm going to add that as one of the marquee games at the end of the show. So we will do that. Kentucky and South Carolina, surprising in this one, Chris. South Carolina off that huge loss last week to Georgia, coming home, and they're only a 5-point underdog for this game against the Wildcats. With the new-look offense for the Cats, they're 3-0 on the season. What is Vegas seeing with this?
I think they're reacting a lot to Kentucky struggling last week. Kentucky Kentucky was a 33-point favorite, did not play well against Chattanooga. I mean, they were 28-23. It's one of those games they just didn't play well. Now it wasn't like it was fluky either. They just didn't play well. It makes you kind of question a little bit. I guess how good they are. I think no excuses. Okay, you got to come to play. You got to play well, and you can get embarrassed. I mean, Will Levis was turning the football over. It looked nothing like what Kentucky's looked like. I just think they were guilty of overlooking, not playing inspired ball. They wasted an opportunity to get better that day, as I like to say. I just think they're a whole lot better than South Carolina. I think South Carolina is really limited. But look, did they develop some bad habits in this last week? Those are not easy, but I just think that Kentucky's a better team. And I think a lot of people that's really not studying it are looking at it and saying, they're kind of close. I don't see this as close. It wouldn't surprise me if Kentucky wins this game by 14, 17 points. It's kind of how I see it. Now, turnovers, sloppy play, that's a great equalizer. But I think they're better in the trenches. I think they've got more explosive capabilities. I'll say this. It's a 5-point. I like doing this. That's my lock of the week in college football. I just think, I went ahead and kind of picked it as like a 7-point win. I think I'm being easy. I think it could easily be a 17-point. If South Carolina upsets Kentucky plays poorly, then hey, that's on me, because you can be better. You have to play better. I just think that was a last week thing and not a sign of what they really are. So we'll see. I'm curious to see what happens with Kentucky this week. But that's my best guess. I think they're thinking too. That South Carolina may make a difference, and it might. We'll see. I'm very intrigued by this game because I don't think it's going to be a good game, but I think it's going to be an interesting game to watch if it makes any sense. Because if Kentucky is sloppy, and this is a game, that to me is a pretty sizable upset, even though the point spread doesn't indicate it in my view. And then yet, if they blow them out, the South Carolina folks were thinking they were going to compete against Georgia, and they fully think that they're better than Kentucky, and it's at home. So I'm curious to watch that game because I see it a lot differently. That's all.
Well, the good news for South Carolina in this one is there's not over 100 4- or 5-star players on that defense over there, as we heard Shane Beamer said. I love that. And it's so funny too, Chris, really quick on that, where you kind of notice the tendencies that coaches pick up from others that they've worked with. And that was such a Kirby line right there. Like, I can probably remember back to 2016, Kirby Smart saying something like that. I think he did kind of say something similar when they just got absolutely smacked by Ole Miss and Oxford, where he was talking about how good and physical their receivers were. So that's what it sounded like. But now Shane Beamer, of course, trying to get that program back to respectability there in Columbia, South Carolina. Southern Miss, 7:30 kickoff at number 1 Alabama, Bryant-Denny Stadium, 7:30 Eastern for that one. Crimson Tide, a huge favorite, no surprise, 45 points over Southern Miss for this one. I mentioned about Brian Robinson earlier. For the Crimson Tide, I guess, Chris, it's one of those things that, it's going to be everybody, can they get up for this game? Can they rebound? Because I guess it's kind of dangerous territory where you come off that close win at Florida, and then you've got that game coming up next week against Ole Miss. I mean, I guess it's kind of you give one, you take two in this one for Alabama, if you will.
I think this is one of those playthrough games. You got to get better from an assignment, effort, technique standpoint. They got to work on them. No, Southern Miss is not good. They got it handed to them by Troy. I mean, offensive line played poorly. You think Southern Miss, and no, it's not Southern Miss. It's not a really good team. It's about working on you, if you're Alabama, and that's kind of how they deal with it. I think the only issue is just, how they do it, how much better they get technique-wise. If you're just looking at it from a score standpoint, which is all a lot of people do, be leery of it. The 45 points are an awful lot. I would, as much as it would be temptation, because nobody bets on their team more than Alabama fans. That's really not Saban's style. I think they're going to work on the running game a lot. So I don't know about the whole win by 45 points. They might, but don't think that's a sure thing. They will dominate the game, but I don't know whether it's a sure thing. We mentioned about Brian Robinson. I don't know if you play them all at all. We'll see. But to me, staying committed a little bit more to the running game, working on that a little bit more, and just from an assignment, run fits, gap control, just those are the things that you can work on, because this is one of those games you can play sloppy and still win. Again, you don't want to build those bad habits up, because next week is going to be an awfully tough matchup for that Alabama defense.
Yeah, it will be. And I mean, that's the part of it as well, is that your mind is on that a little bit. But also, too, I think that probably the players, they've heard what people have said this week. They've heard the people, oh, Alabama's not elite. They were exposed, all those different types of things. Don't we know that this is when Nick Saban is at his best? He truly is Michael Corleone and Godfather 3, where it's when you think I'm out, I pull me back in. And that's what it is. I mean, we do his homework for him, Chris, where it's, the line earlier in the week about, have any of you ever played sports? And I do like what Lane Kiffin said about that, by the way, where he was like, they went to a hostile environment against a top 15 team and they won, and we're acting like they lost. So that just shows you the power that is Alabama football and the expectations that are for the Crimson Tide. So 45-point favorite in this one. See how they handle Southern Miss on Saturday night. Again, 7:30 Eastern kick for that one. Now let's go back to a 7 o'clock game, because I'm going to put this as a co-marquee game this week. As you mentioned, Tennessee and Florida, and number 11 Florida is a 19-point favorite in this one. The question, of course, for Tennessee, Chris, is quarterback. Looking like probably Hendon Hooker would be my guess for this one. Joe Milton, just the deep ball accuracy has not been there. I mean, we'll see how Josh Heupel handles this, but we know about their lack of defensive depth. Just overall, Florida, a more talented team. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But, I mean, in this one, how do you see it shaking out? Is Florida maybe a little banged up from last week's game?
Maybe banged up, and I'm wondering how they play. Do they begin to kind of feel themselves? Last year, and I don't think this is going to apply in this game. I don't think this is a game that they're really in danger or any threat of losing. But, we saw Florida play well, and I remember about this time, well, not this time, it was more like late October last year and doing the show, and people started asking about Florida. Are they in it? Could they make the national playoffs? Could they do this? And, it was like, how do they match up against Bama? Because, once they beat Georgia, it looked like their head. It just was the whole, the LSU game, the play well in big games, and then just kind of really they struggled at the end of the year. I don't think we're going to see any of that, but I think it's worth bringing up to see how they respond after a big performance in which everything comes out like, man, what a great effort. They are getting a bunch. Isn't it amazing? And I was thinking about this. It's just perception, right? Kirby Smart loses to Alabama close, and he can't win the big one. Dan Mullen loses close, and man, what a great job!
Oh, I know. Yeah,
it's interesting. Look, Florida did a great job. They had a great game plan. They did an outstanding job. They're much better than Tennessee. They'll win this game. They should win it going away. But I'm looking to see how this team progresses and builds off of that performance. It's great to say, yeah, we won them again. Go ahead and get it done, get better. I think, though, what makes this interesting, and this is what I'm looking for, is how will at least Tennessee's got some offense in which they can, with the pace and style, to cause some problems. So what I'm curious about in this game, how does Todd Grantham play it defensively? How much you got to chase? How much they get a line as aggressive as he is Does Tennessee get the ball snapped before Florida can get a line? Do they get some cheap points? Can this be kind of a quasi shootout game? That's what I'm curious to see what might happen in the game. I don't really have any questions about who's going to win it, really. Tennessee kind of turns the ball over. I mean, I think it's probably one of those 38-17 type games, something like that. I don't know. But maybe, just maybe, if Tennessee plays a clean game offensively, maybe they can score some points and make it interesting. I don't know. That's what's intriguing to me about this game, is the game within the game.
All right, let's go to the marquee game of the week, the game that everybody in the SEC is looking at, and that is going to be in Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium. Number 7, Texas A&M. Number 16, Arkansas. This starts a brutal stretch for the Razorbacks in this one. Heard Sam Pittman talk about that earlier in the week, where, of course, last year they played at Kyle Field in College Station. This year they're going back to Jerry's Stadium, Jerry World, as everybody calls it. I get his point on that. I think that really two things I'm looking at here, Chris, is I think number one for Arkansas, I don't believe that they're going to be able to win the line of scrimmage like they did against Texas a couple of weeks ago. That's number one. Number two, the thing I'm going to be looking at is what type of game plan Barry Odom has for young Zach Calzada, and can he frustrate him enough? I mean, we've seen what Drew Morgan and that defense there, Bumper Pool, and the Arkansas defense can do, and how they can frustrate quarterbacks. So I think that those are two things that are going to be looked at here. I heard you talking about on the ACC side how you could see Clemson and NC State being a low-scoring, close game. I think we're going to see the same thing here.
I think we could. From Arkansas' standpoint, the defense has been really good. The offense is not turning the ball over a whole lot. The line is played very, very well. They're a really good line of scrimmage team. They block well. They tackle well. The running game is very good. The quarterback run is a big part of it. They don't really attack you deep in terms of big plays. Now, on the other side, I mean, if you look at it and you're making a case for Arkansas, it's because even though they had the first half against Rice, it wasn't real clean. Arkansas is just, they've played better. They've played closer to their talent level. A&M, they're far from their best game. And I'm curious to see if this is their best game. They're turning it over too much. They're really sloppy. The offense is stalling, mainly due to the offensive line issues. But they've only had one game in which they could have Zach Calzada prepare. It's a learn about game. Learn about the team. It's one thing to have a good feel for what A&M is going to be going into the season, and then what they are now. So it's very curious to me how they're going to play it. So offensively, for A&M going up against Arkansas's defense, Barry Odom is going to throw them a lot of different looks. He's going to play some too high shell and try to force the patience and test the patience. But I also think that opens up things in the middle of the field for the tight end. I think they're going to move things around a little bit. I think they're going to give a lot of pre-snap looks that they're going to adjust post-snap. Barry's good at that. I think they're going to try to force him to throw the football. I do think that the safeties are a little bit better. The deep middle's a little bit better for Arkansas than outside the numbers. So will there be some big plays in the passing game? Will A&M be able to run the football well enough? Will the offensive line that struggled, how will they fare up going up against, quite frankly, a better defensive line than they faced all year long? They're averaging 185 rushing yards per game, and they've got two good backs. Shane is really made an impact. Isaiah Spiller, we know about them, but it doesn't look like they're going to have the full version of Aniyah Smith, the healthy version. Whether he had a concussion last week, may not even play. If he does, I don't. So that's a big part of it. Now, on the other side, I'm very curious. Mike Elko does more things schematically pre-snap than any defensive coordinator in the league. This is, a defense that's played pretty well, but they're going to be tested defending the run. They're going to put numbers in the box. They're going to force Arkansas to beat them in the passing game. I would. So, Texas A&M's defense is generating more pressure up front. But how will they play it? I think they'll probably put some heat on Jefferson. But how much do you want to chase him? Versus getting out of your rush lanes and having him turn and running. I think this game is fascinating from a style standpoint. A&M is having a hard time scoring against anybody, and they're having a hard time scoring even when they're getting like red zone. I mean, the passing game in the red zone has been really poor. This is historically, Arkansas has lost 9 straight in this game. There's a lot of storylines to this, go on and on and on. I think it's a fascinating game. I think it's a really close game, maybe more than most people think. And yet, I'm more intrigued by this game than I thought I would be at the beginning of the year, Dan, because Arkansas is better than I thought they would be. A&M is not on film looking as good as I thought they would be. I still think A&M's the better team, the more talent, but I can absolutely look at the film, take you in the film room and tell you how Arkansas looks like the better team, but I also know what A&M's potential is. So that's what fascinates me about this game. I think this game is huge. I think we're going to find out, just like I said, the West this week and next week is going to tell us an awful lot in all aspects, because we're going to see Mississippi State, LSU, and LSU Auburn, and that's going to kind of figure out maybe kind of where 5, 6, 7 is. This game might tell us where 3 and 4 is, or and then Ole Miss, Alabama is going to tell us who 1 is. I think these next 2 weeks in the SEC West, it takes center stage in what is the deepest and best division in all of football. I'm fascinated by this game because I do think this is a much better game than I think, at least than I ever thought it would be at the beginning of the year. I thought A&M would be much better, and they're not. And I think they might be good enough to win this game, but I'm not sure.
We'll see. Again, 3:30 CBS there in Arlington, AT&T Stadium, number 7, Texas A&M, number 16, Arkansas. Speaking of film room breakdowns, Chris, as now we get into the mailbag portion of the show, Black Hollywood on the question here. Yeah, here on the comments section. Quick question. What exactly is the film room breakdown on your website? Great question.
Yeah, we got them. We go to each of the games, basically take the film grade notes of what we've seen about these teams and do a write-up of the game. So you can go and find it by conference. Like I said, we've got a few featured games, but you go by conference. So if you're looking at Boston College, Missouri, we make it easy for you. We take it and you go and get it in the SEC film breakdowns, and you can go in the ACC and get them. Obviously, when you just got LSU, Mississippi State, that's just there. So easy to find, we think, and a good way to go ahead and find it, and you can get them all there and get a good feel for that. And again, we'll do the same thing in the breakdowns.
All right, not exactly how to say this handle here, but MSumGR, I guess. I don't know, in the comments section. If I butchered that, I apologize. But what do you think will happen with Ed Ogeron if he loses to Mississippi State?
Yeah, by the way, new guy, thanks for joining us. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be an ugly stretch, because you got Auburn next week. It's just going to make it that much more pressurized, where, we hadn't even gotten to Florida game yet. We hadn't gotten to Alabama yet. We hadn't gotten to Ole Miss yet. I think it gets ugly. I think it's I don't think it's an overreaction to say that the countdown of the inevitable starts. And then anything short of upsetting multiple of the teams that I mentioned, should be tough. That's what I think is going to happen if they lose. So I think it's a pivotal game.
Friday Night Lights with Gary Gaines and with Coach Taylor on the TV show. The for sale signs in the yard. Maybe that starts happening.
I never watched the show, but I'm familiar with for sale signs in the yard.
I think the book adaptation, the Buzz Bissinger book, I think would be more your speed there. But
look,
of course, about Odessa Permian.
It doesn't. I think vets have already started. Do you know after when Nick Saban was at LSU, first year he lost to Alabama Birmingham, and they put for sale signs in Nick's yard after that. Yep, that then. So I know exactly where Ed lives. It's not far from where I live. It's on. Ed doesn't play golf, but it's behind. I shouldn't say this. People don't know. It's a university club. I was about to say what hole it's behind. It's probably not a good thing. You can't get to it from the golf course, but unless you got a canoe and all that. But anyway, I would imagine there's some stuff there. Nick actually moved. He bought a house to where it was closed gate after the first year. It got tough. So the point is, it's already getting tough, and it would get tougher. And I think we've kind of gone over it in the breakdown of that game, that it has some big picture effects, which makes the game really intriguing for that reason.
No doubt about it. Spartan Barton, one of our loyal followers here in the comments section, he always asks some great questions. How about this one? Go nationally here. What are your thoughts on C.J. Stroud not playing this weekend? Going to be in an emergency capacity this weekend for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think it's as big a deal. I mean, Akron's really bad. I know he got banged up against Tulsa. I mean, look, we're going to see Kyle McCord and Jack Miller. Not Quinn Ewers, but we're going to see McCord and Miller. And I think for them, it's about getting that offensive line to come off the ball and, do what they need to do. And just, man, right now, what's going on at Ohio State is who's calling the defense. They put secondary coach back down on the field. They moved Kerry Combs upstairs. And I know they're not saying who's calling the plays, and it's a collaborative effort. It's that sort of thing. But they, comments like we're going to make drastic changes to fix our defense. You get those type of comments. So I don't think it has anything this week to do with the game against Akron. But getting into conference play, I never thought I'd be saying this. But Ohio State and Clemson both have to play better, or there's some roadblocks within their conference that shouldn't be there.
Agreed.
But they're there if you don't play any better than you're playing right now, because you're having some issues. And some of the issues that they had against Oregon, if you're Ohio State, you had against Tulsa, you had against Minnesota the week before. They're frustrated. They are really frustrated in Columbus right now.
Yeah, we'll see if this is a get-right week for Ohio State, but you're exactly right about Clemson, too, and it could even be seen this weekend against North Carolina State. That's not going to be a gimme for Dabo Swinney's team, as I believe they actually go to NC State for that one. So
yes.
We'll see if the Wolfpack
and they don't
are able to pull that off.
They don't get along very well. Remember what happened in the Clemson NC State game?
Oh, that's right,
remember was it Kelly Bryant? Was he the one with the towel? Remember, Bradley Chubb kept stealing his towel.
Mm-hmm.
The do rag. Well, the little towel.
The hand towel. The
hand towel that the quarterbacks run. Where the kids call it the do rag. So I'm just trying to be hip here. So he kept taking the towel,
mm-hmm.
and then Dave Doran filed a complaint, not about the towels, but he filed a complaint that because he spotted, or somebody on NC State's sideline spotted a laptop on the sideline of Clemson, which you can't have. And so he called the league office to do an investigation. Well, apparently, I don't know what they said the investigation uncovered what the laptop was for. Something to do about tickets with recruits or whatever. But remember, Dabo Swinney came out and he was asked about the investigation. at a press conference, and he said, "Yes, we're investigating what happened to all of our towels." and then, and so it got a little. Anyway, I don't know. So they don't like one another. They kind of took some little shots at one another. So that adds a little spice to the matchup.
All right, a couple more here, both from Spartan Barton, because I thought these were really good questions. One of them, why was Florida able to turn it around, a dumpster fire that was so quickly? Is that something that can happen for Miami or Florida State?
Well, Florida's an example of a school that facilities-wise has not been as good as, the Alabamas and all, but it's still pretty good. They're in the SEC, and that program is good, and they've just were lacking a coach because they've maybe hired the wrong coaches. Look, they've had Spurrier, they've had Urban Meyer, but then, Will Muschamp and McElwain didn't work. So that was the answer. Why is the quick turnaround? How? Because they found a really good coach. By the way, just to give you an idea of how things happen, they wanted Chip Kelly. Florida wanted Chip Kelly. Yeah. Then their second choice was Scott Frost, who had told them he was going to Nebraska. They wanted the Central Florida coach. So Scott, and then Chip preferred to go to UCLA because he liked to be off the radar. And then so they went to Dan Mullen. So the answer is, how did they turn it around? Dan Mullen. He's that good of a coach. That's a place. So, why can't Florida State or Miami do that? Why can't they find the guy? Well, that's the whole point of what we've talked about. Is can you attract that elite guy? Can you get a Mario Cristobal or someone that is an elite coach? I mean, you end up getting somebody that's not quite at that elite level that can turn it around. And as Dan posed the question, and we talked about it earlier, in order to get that type of guy, you have to have that type of a commitment, and your program has to be of the stature to where somebody like that would want it. And for Dan Mullen, huge jump for them. Dan actually had an interest in the Oregon job when it went to Willie Taggart. So leaving Mississippi State, he had a few opportunities. He was looking for the right one. Going back to Florida made a lot of sense. So they were able to get him. It's a great job. Florida State, Miami are good jobs, can be great again, but it's not as attractive as Florida for a number of reasons, and that's how Florida turned it around, the right head coach. And that's how you get it turned around, the right head coach with the right support. But do you have enough to sell to get that guy that could get it done? That's the key.
One final one, again from Spartan Barton, and I had teased this earlier because I love this question. For Miami, Hugh Freeze.
Hey, look, I think you would love it. I'm going to tell you something, and I say I don't want to first year coach. I'm not taking shots or anything. I get it, but I said it at the time, so I'm not saying it now. If I'm South Carolina, that's who I would have hired, Hugh Freeze. You're at a place, you got to really get somebody that can do something unique and special. And look, if you didn't want, and I know they didn't want to go down the NCAA route, but you got Jamie Chadwell right there too. I mean, I don't get that, and I think they'll regret that down the road. But anyway, they got the guy. Hugh Freeze, how would he do at Virginia Tech?
Right.
How would he do it in Miami?
Right.
I think, it's probably time to look at Hugh Freeze in a different light. By the way, not going to make a bunch of noise, but they play Syracuse this weekend, and they don't get many chances to be on that stage. But yeah, look, I'm curious to see how far he gets up on a short list with the openings this year. I really am intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, it's somebody that the coach, we know how the coach is. I think that obviously his ego and everything off the field at Ole Miss is what did him in. It's the whole statute of limitations thing. I mean, I understand the optics of it all too, but I do wonder if he's going to have to do that. Chris, is what I'm getting at. Is he going to have to do the apology tour of the look? I made my mistakes in the past. I own my mistakes. I shouldn't have done what I did, and I just hope now that people can look at me as a person who deserves a second chance.
Think he needs to. I think that's what you have to do. I think he made mistakes. I think what hurts him a lot is he really came off as a phony. A lot of people, I mean, thought I knew him fairly well. I didn't know all the stuff, but I had some head coaches, before any of this came out, they used to call him Coach Swag. For people who don't know, there was a evangelist in Baton Rouge named Jimmy Swaggart, who was, preached from the pulpit and sinning and all that. And he basically got caught doing the same thing that he got caught with a prostitute. So that was the nickname in the coaching profession, that people kind of knew that was kind of how Hugh Freeze rolled. But it's one thing to be that. And when you're the head coach at a college, that's different than in the NFL. That's stuff. But makes it worse if you're a Bible thumper and you come across as a phony guy. And I think he's got to own up to it. And I don't know. I'm not saying that he's going to get any of these jobs. In fact, I've known the Virginia Tech administration. I don't think they go in that direction personally. And I don't know that Justin's going to get let go this year, but we'll see how that plays out. I thought Justin would work there, but anyway, I think it's real interesting for Hugh Freeze, and I don't know. And Hugh Freeze at Miami would be real interesting. Real interesting.
No doubt about it. Well, what's going to be really interesting is the games coming up this weekend. We will look back at them early next week. Follow him on Twitter. He is Chris Landry at Landry Football. I am on Twitter as well at Dan Matthews ATL. Find us here on SEC Football and Beyond. Tell your friends about us. They can find us wherever they get their podcast need, Apple, Spotify, wherever that might be. And of course, as always, download the Southern Sports Today app and you can get all great college football content there. Chris, enjoy the games this weekend. We will be catching up with you early next week. For Chris Landry, I'm Dan Matthews. It's been another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. Enjoy the games. Talk to you next week.